How did you get into running? For some of us, it's because we were forced to run laps in gym class until our lungs burned and our legs felt like lead. For others, it's because they wanted to outrun their problems. But for many of us, it's because running was something that we could do, something that was accessible to everyone regardless of background, physical ability, or socioeconomic status. All you need is a good pair of shoes and the will to put one foot in front of the other. In today's episode, we're looking at a man who started running because he didn't know what else to do. His journey took him from the streets of New York City to the Olympics, and despite so much working against him, he never gave up. This is the incredible story of the fastest man in prison, a runner who has done the impossible. Our story begins in 1968 in Harlem, New York City. It was here that a young boy named Norman was born. He grew up surrounded by crime and violence, but thankfully he had his mom and dad to look after him. Although his parents weren't wealthy, they made sure that Norman and his siblings were happy and healthy. Sadly, Norman's father died when he was just 13 years old. Then a few years later, his mother was also killed in a car accident. Now an orphan, Norman went to live with his older sister in Queens. At school, Norman got into trouble a lot. He was a class clown who would disrupt lessons by making rude comments and throwing paper airplanes. He wasn't violent, but he wasn't exactly a model student either. At home, his sister tried her best to discipline him, but she worked long hours as a nurse, so most of the time Norman was left to himself. At night, he hung out on the streets with a bad crowd. Together, they did stupid things, like steal cars and skip town in them, rob stores and houses, and sell drugs. One night, Norman and his friends decided to rob a store. They kicked down the door and grabbed all the money they could find. They were getting away with it too until Norman tripped over some boxes. The noise brought the police right to him, and soon he was sitting in a police car while they drove him to jail. In the end, he was sentenced to 2 to 4 years at the Manhattan House of Corrections. Norman was only 19 years old. He hadn't committed any violent crimes and had no criminal record. But now, there was no way out. For the next 2 years, he lived in prison. He experienced all the violence, intimidation, and dehumanization that goes along with being incarcerated. There was nothing to keep him busy. He spent most of his days in solitary confinement. Sometimes he was allowed outside for an hour to play basketball, but other than that, he was stuck inside. To cope with the boredom and depression, Norman turned to the only thing he knew how to do: running. He started running up and down the tiers of the prison dorm. Up and down, back and forth, day in and day out. Prison can be a lonely place, but Norman found a friend in the guard of the prison gym. This man saw how dedicated Norman was to his craft and gave him access to the gym outside of his hour of recreation time. Norman used this time wisely and would spend hours running on the treadmill and working out on the weight machines. The physical exertion helped take his mind off his problems, and for a little while, he could just focus on his breathing and the rhythm of his feet hitting the pavement. When Norman first started running, he could only jog for 5 minutes without stopping. But after months of practice, he was able to run a mile without stopping. Soon, word spread throughout the prison about Norman's talent, and people started placing bets on him. If he could beat the guards at their own game, he would win $50. Norman accepted the challenge, but not for the money. He just wanted to prove to everyone that he was more than his reputation as a street thug. On May 11, 1988, Norman won the bet when he beat the guards in a mile race. After winning the bet, Norman didn't want to stop running. In fact, he had set his sights on a much bigger goal: the Olympics. He figured if he could make the Olympic team, then maybe people would finally see him as an athlete rather than a prisoner. The problem was that there were no Olympic trials at the time, and even if there were, nobody from the Olympic Committee was going to come to the small gym in Manhattan to find him. But Norman didn't let this deter him. He ran every day. Even after he was released from prison in 1990, he continued to train. By this point, he was running on the streets in Central Park, trying to make the most of what little time he had available to him. Eventually, he caught the attention of a track coach at the City College of New York. Impressed by Norman's raw talent, the coach invited him to join the university's track team. But being on a college track team wasn't enough for Norman. He still wanted to go to the Olympics, so he trained harder than ever before, running between 120 and 150 miles per week. In 1992, his hard work paid off when he qualified for the Olympic trials in the 100-meter dash. He placed fourth, just missing out on a spot on the Olympic team. But this didn't discourage him. He continued to train and wait for his chance. In 1996, he qualified again, this time placing second. He was finally going to the Olympics. Norman arrived in Atlanta, and everything seemed to be going well. He advanced to the semifinals of the 100-meter dash. But here his luck ran out. He false started and was disqualified. This was devastating for Norman. All those years of training for one shot at glory, and it was taken away from him in a matter of seconds. He went back to New York and got on with his life. He got married and had children and spent most of his time working as a counselor at a juvenile detention center. He never stopped running, though. In 2001, he set the world record for running 100 meters in prison clothes, and in 2004 he won the New York City Marathon in the 100-meter dash. Despite all his accomplishments, Norman never forgot where he came from. He credited much of his success to the support of the late Bill Besthoff, who was the head track coach at Monroe College and was instrumental in helping Norman get to the Olympics. Together, they started a foundation called the POZ Track Club, which provides underprivileged kids with the resources they need to succeed in track and field. In addition to coaching young athletes, Norman also works as a motivational speaker. He travels around the country sharing his story and giving kids hope that no matter how difficult their circumstances may seem, they can always improve their situation with hard work and determination. Norman's story serves as an inspiration to people around the world. He is living proof that no matter how dark things may seem, there is always light at the end of the tunnel. The last mile is a testament to the power of the human spirit and the importance of never giving up on your dreams. Now it's time to hear from you. What do you think of Norman's story? How did you get into running? And what are your thoughts on the role that running can play in helping people overcome adversity? Share your thoughts below. Also, please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. You can also check out some of our other videos. Thanks for watching.